All right. Hi, everybody. This is Joanne Eisen. And I, as you know, am here with a hope and a dream to educate and enlighten everybody to think about things in different ways and new perspectives, and hopefully be able to learn from these shows. So today on Reach the Unlimited, I would like to welcome my beautiful friend and guest, Carolan Dickinson, who has been with me before, and I love chatting with her. So welcome today to our show, Carolan.
Thank you very much. I love being here. We always have some interesting conversations, and it's fun just to have a moment to reconnect anyway.
Yeah, it is. And take a breath in this fast world. Tell
Yes,
everybody a little bit about yourself.
I am a psychic medium and an author, and I teach classes on personal and spiritual development. And I'm also a student. So I'm going back to school to get my master's degree in counseling, which I'm going to finish shortly.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. That's always a big challenge.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So we were chatting about what we would talk about today, and we both actually had very similar words. Do you want to start about what you're thinking about, and why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what your word was today?
Well, my word today was hope. And I've just been, for the last, I would say, week or so, I've just been talking about hope and recognizing it in my life and how it then leads to other things and allows me to change my perspective.
That's a big one. Tell everybody a little bit about what, from your perspective, what hope means to you and what you've been focusing on.
Well, I think hope can be a lot of things. It can be inspirational. It can be hoping for information to come. It can be recognizing this sort of longing in your soul
Mm-hmm.
and this a longing in your soul and a knowingness in your soul that at some point everything is going to be better. You're going to overcome. There is movement even when you can't see it. So for me, I think hope means a lot of things.
It really does. I love what you're saying about having that longing within your soul, because I think that sometimes can take us out of hope, even when things aren't bad in our lives or around in our environment. But that's a really big thing to really focus on, because we can feel lost or we can feel disheartened about our life or direction.
Right. And so one of the things that I'm finding is that affirmations that I say to myself,
Hmm.
or even that feeling of focusing on the feeling of being hopeful.
Hmm.
I have heard coaches say, hope is not a strategy, but you know what? Sometimes it really is.
Yeah, exactly. We really
Yeah.
need that focus for sure. My word was trust, and we were talking about how the two of them really work together, because I think one of the things that I had been learning was I really had trouble trusting from my past. And so I didn't have a lot of hope, because you can't have hope if you can't trust. What do you think about that?
I think that trust and hope are both muscles.
Exactly.
And yeah, and the more that we use them,
Hmm.
the stronger they get.
Hmm.
And then eventually they become our go-to places, which I know you have gone to those places.
Hmm.
So, but I also feel like it's a process too. I mean, you don't just, especially if you've had some challenges in life, you don't just get to the point where you go, now everything's rosy and I'm looking at the world through rose colored glasses.
Right.
It's not that, but it is shifting your perspective to a different view.
It really is. And I think that sometimes can be hard to see that, especially when we're in the middle of something. But it really is as simple as shifting that perspective, seeing
Yeah.
things from a different light.
Sometimes not easy,
No,
especially if we're hurting or going through something.
right.
But that's when those, even saying things like, okay, this doesn't feel wonderful right now,
Hmm.
but I'm going to trust and be hopeful that this is going to work out exactly as it's supposed to.
And that's important because when you are in the middle of something, you can feel like it won't be better. But I know for me, one of the things that helped me go through my process was to listen to nature, to listen to the birds that sing or watch the bees that are, flying by in the flowers, because it shows you that they don't have to worry about each moment of each day like we do. And they're always there. They're always going to be there. There's always going to be another day for them. I feel like that helped me.
I think that's important to, when you can focus on the simple things like nature.
Hmm.
One of the things that I do is I go and walk.
Hmm.
And so I walk and talk to my guides and angels. I am walking and just being silent and being aware and grateful for nature and the fresh air, the
Hmm.
chance to move my body. I
Hmm.
think it's finding those like really simple things to be grateful for that can then turn all of that stuff back into hope and trust.
Exactly. And I agree. Moving is a big thing because you're moving your energy. You're getting out of that slump. You're moving energy if you're having a hopeless moment. Um, and just breathing the air in nature.
Yes. So I'm usually very good about either walking or going to a yoga class
Hmm.
at least like 5 to 6 times a week. And um, it just really helps me stay balanced.
It does. It really does. What are some things that you think people can get, like you get into like a spiraling effect sometimes in our mind and our thinking? What are some of the things that you could help people with that may help them to come out of that besides
Well,
walking?
besides walking, I think that sometimes being the observer
Hmm.
rather being the participant in something is huge because listen, not everybody is walking a light worker path.
Hmm.
Not everybody has tools. There's a lot of people in the world that are hurting that don't
Hmm.
have a positive mindset or work in the atmosphere of light and love. And so, and I hear a lot of that. So I always say that it's important that you
Hmm.
stay focused in your own belief system and send that person, however difficult in the moment, love, because I think people can get mostly caught up in ruminating about what someone has done to them,
Yes.
or a painful interaction with someone who doesn't have any tools.
Yes. I did my camera. I agree with you. And I love that you talk, because that's a big one for me, being the observer. We always have to be the observer of our life. It helps us to kind of like step back and detach in some ways, and maybe we can see things in a different way. So I am a really big teacher of being the observer of your life and not being attached.
And that's a hard one.
It
It is a hard one because that means we have to let go of the control of
is.
something.
Yes.
And, if I don't control my world, if
Hmm.
I don't control my environment, then things won't get done and then it won't be perfect. And then rumination starts and it gets worse and worse and worse. And, we've talked about my recovering type A, and
Hmm.
I am working on that. But I have noticed that since I have stepped back a
Hmm.
little bit and worked more on becoming the observer, the less um, angst I feel, the less tightness I feel in my body. And there's just a lot of things that I have to let go of on a daily basis. And I think that most people are that way.
I think that they are, and I think I love how you were talking about. I love everything you're saying today. I love how you went into the about being a type A and controlling. We think that we have control, but in reality, when you're the observer of your life, you realize how little control you actually do have,
Right.
which is funny.
And right. And the only thing that we really are control of is how we respond versus react to
Right,
something.
right.
And the less I engage with those other things that don't feel good to me,
Mhm.
the better off I am.
Right. And I
And
want to go into a little bit because some people are like, well, how are you the observer of your life? How can that be? Because I mean, if you don't really practice it or if you don't really know about it, you may think like, well, of course I'm the observer of my life. I see through my eyes every day. I know what I'm doing. What does that mean to you to be the observer of your life?
to me, it means, for example, you're having a conversation with someone
Hmm.
and it's not going well,
Hmm.
and they have said something that's hurt your feelings. Instead of being engaged in that pain or whatever you think that that person has done, if
Hmm.
you just step back, you will actually be able to be present with them and see and experience that they are the one that's in pain and
Right.
they just need you to listen.
Right.
And it's really hard not to take those kinds of things personally,
Hmm.
but it really isn't about you. And that's a big thing to can remember, is that when those kinds of things happen, it really isn't about you.
Hmm.
And so to just be willing in that moment, maybe in 2 or 3 moments later, to just say, okay, I can see that this person was really hurting in that moment, or they don't understand, and that's okay.
And I think that if we can keep in perspective that it never really is about us. I mean,
Right,
we could cause something to happen and we're again causing a reaction kind of thing. But the way somebody's going to react to us is from their perspective or their
right.
patterns or their story. So it really is never about us. And if we can look within ourselves, then we can see how we're reacting to other people and be able to unfold that as well, which is
Right.
an interesting paradigm if you think about it.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think that um, one of the things that really has helped me is my own study of mediumship,
Mhm.
because I have to get myself out of the way in order to do that work.
Mhm.
And that includes my own ego and all of my other stuff that I might have going on.
Yeah.
And so it's been a great learning for me personally to learn how to get that stuff out of the way and
Mhm.
just do the work. And I kind of adopted that policy for daily living. It's like,
Yeah.
get that stuff out of the way and just be present and do the work, Carol. That's it.
I agree with you. I think for my process as well, that's where I really started learning to become the observer because
Yeah.
I didn't have to, I didn't have to control and run the whole bus. I could
Yeah.
just step back, be in the now, be in the present, and just take the ego and put it aside. The ego just doesn't have to. Not that we do that all the time. We're human beings, but
Right.
best that we can, we do that, and then we become the observer, and then we don't have that knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah. I think that's the goal, right?
Yeah,
It's the
yeah,
bar that we set for ourselves.
exactly.
And I have just been so much lighter and happier since I've started doing that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that things like meditation,
Hmm.
prayer, yoga, things that address ego,
Yes,
and getting your ego out of the way
right.
are really important for just life in general.
The other day I was thinking about meditation and how, because so many people have kind of a stigma about meditation. I can't do it. I can't sit long enough. I can't do this. I mean, we put a lot of beliefs around it or a lot of
Mhm.
old thinking patterns around it. I was thinking, it's if you can just go through that process, if you can give yourself the time to go through that process, then you start to get to know who you are, and then you don't have as much difficulty in sitting in meditation. So I think these are all like muscles that we're talking about
Right.
in the observer,
Yeah.
and learning about how was it for you when you started doing meditation?
It was really difficult for me when I first started. I started with like 10 minutes,
Hmm.
and then I was in yoga. And so it kind of all worked together for me about breathing and being present on my mat. And
Right.
then I was able to learn how to sit and be present and be quiet. But
Mhm.
um, it wasn't something that I just fell into.
Right.
It was, again, a process. And so it was like 10 minutes of music. Then
Mhm.
it might be 15 minutes of music,
Mhm.
and then 20 minutes of guided meditation.
Mhm.
And then over the course of a year, I might have gotten to 30 minutes. Then, a course of another year, I've gotten to 60 minutes of sitting in silence.
Mhm.
So, but that, um, getting from 30 minutes to 60 minutes of sitting in silence was a year before I could do that every day.
I want people to really hear that because I don't think any of us just wake up and say, okay, we're going to, I mean, maybe I'm sure there's some people who do it naturally, depending on your
Yeah.
personality. But for me, I wasn't one of those people. And I'm like you. It was the
Yeah.
progression of really taking the time and not judging it. Like even
Right.
today, there's still, because I can sit for, like you, an hour. And I do also the silence, which is
Right.
not easy for people to do. But some days you just feel wonky and you may not have a good day at it, and that's okay because we're not supposed to be perfect here.
Right.
We're supposed to be evolving and learning every day.
I have learned, through the process, that my meditation is a mirror of my life. And
Yes,
so,
exactly.
so if I'm having a kind of hard day settling into my meditation,
Hmm.
it's because I've got too much going on and I need to either release it or take care of it and
Right.
then come back to meditation. And then there are just days that no matter what you do, it's just going to be a struggle. But um, it- I am, I just make myself sit there anyway,
Well, I think for
because,
me,
yeah,
I don't judge it because what I would do
yeah,
is make myself sit there and then get all like fidgety and whatever and judge it. And I should be, you just don't judge it. You just go through it, the process,
right.
the allowing.
So if it's like all that time you sit there trying to reconnect,
Uh huh.
you're learning something, you're developing something even in the struggle.
Exactly.
So, and I think that's one of the things I've learned from yoga is even in the struggle, there's growth, even though you don't see it.
Right.
So, some people may say, why are you sitting for 60 minutes a day? you know, and it never would have occurred to me a year ago that I would even be able to do that. But it's it's part of our development, and it's what we signed up to do. So, um, and through it, I have learned so much about myself, done
Yeah.
a lot of healing,
Hmm.
and uh, it's been really surprising how it's changed to me in a very subtle ways. Do you
I totally
understand
agree.
that?
And I don't, no, I don't totally agree with you. And some days it's not subtle. Some days because you're taking that time for yourself. And that's something that we forget to do in today's world is take the time for ourselves. And there's many ways to do it. And for me, sitting in meditation is my special time. And when I don't do it, then it's not like when you were growing up in a religion and you had to do certain things and then you feel guilty because it's guilted into you that you didn't do it. I really feel like a part of me is missing when I don't do it, when I don't sit with that time, because sometimes, like you said, we learn subtle lessons. Sometimes I get really big epiphanies and really big understandings of myself. But you don't do that if you don't take the time to know yourself and spend that
True.
time with yourself.
Very true. I've had instances of something that needed to be healed come up. I
Hmm.
have had moments with angels and guides,
Hmm.
and but most of the time it's just quietness.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, when it took me, when I was going from like 30 minutes to
Hmm.
an hour, it took me that entire year, and I got to the place where I could do 50 minutes consistently.
Hmm.
And for some reason, I hit this wall.
Hmm.
Why can't I do the other 10?
Wow.
It was so
Wow.
enlightening.
Wow.
And so I just like worked with it, asked for healing, asked for help. And one day I'm getting ready to sit in meditation, and I asked the question, and I heard, sit for spirit. Don't sit for yourself, sit for spirit. And I was like, okay, I can do that.
Like, remember, ding, 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 ding. Well,
And
that's
I
the
was like,
point though,
yeah,
because there's meditations for different things, right? Now,
right,
what we're doing is we're building for actual mediumship type work, which is different than if I'm going to be doing some kind of healing or, just need a timeout or whatever. There's so many different reasons for meditation.
right.
And so there's no judgment on whether you sit in the quiet or whether you go through guided or if you listen to music, because it depends on what you're doing and where you're going, don't you think?
I do. And for me, that message was, it's not about you all over again.
Uh,
I was like, okay, I got it.
I've
And
gotten,
then I went right into it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But it is an important part of, I think, the survival of being here as a human on this planet. And there's no judgment whether people meditate or not, because
Right.
everybody's going to go through their process in their own way. But it brings so much more clarity and peace to yourself when you can go into a meditation and understand the bigger picture.
It really does. And I was surprised. My sister is a guided imagery facilitator,
Mm,
and she had a workshop uh, like a month ago about different ways to meditate.
mm-hmm,
And this can include walking meditations and also like coloring meditations. So
mm-hmm.
you don't even have to sit in silence, because I know that's really hard for some people,
Yeah, it is.
right?
Right.
But taking your thoughts and moving them to just coloring also centers you.
Mm-hmm.
And so those can be meditation.
It
And
also opens up a creativity inside of yourself.
yes,
A lot of times parts of you that you don't even realize you have.
that's very
Art,
true.
art type meditations. Yeah. And walking is an amazing. I know when I first started, um, I was running, and that was my meditation, was when I was running, and I would get really deep into, I don't know, my connection with self without even knowing I was doing it. But I couldn't do it sitting still. I
Yeah.
had to be out moving because that's where I was at the time.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love
Right.
meditation. So I would encourage people to try it in their way, to not be afraid of it. Be open to the fact that you are connecting to parts of you that can be hard to connect to again, but that those are the things that you have to heal as well.
Right. I totally agree with you. And if nothing else, it gives your brain and your being a break from all the barrage of input from the outside world.
Mhm.
And I think it's a reset.
Mhm.
It just allows us to reset.
Mhm.
So, are you aware of Insight Timer? I share this quite a bit.
That's a
It's
meditation app, isn't it?
it is.
Yeah, yeah, I'm aware
And
of it. I don't have it, but I am aware of it. Do you wanna talk about it?
it's yeah, I do, because it's a free app,
Mhm.
and you can go on there. It's got a timer. You can set a timer for however long you want to meditate. There's guided meditations there. There's music you can set there. So you can really set it up any way that you want and
Mhm.
try different things for yourself. And, you can even, because it's a phone app, you can even take it outside on your lunch break
Yeah.
if the weather's nice, and just get 10 minutes to yourself.
I have certain music ones that I use when I'm like, I can't sit, I'm like working or doing whatever, but I'm feeling a lot of anxiety. So I've heard of that one. I'll have to check that out. But I do that as well. That same kind of thinking too, though, is I'll put in my earphones or whatever and just listen to that to kind of, because meditation and coming back to oneself just calms you down,
It does.
them down.
Yeah, it really does. I think that when you can get quiet and you can get some of that outside influence away,
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can then tune back into yourself and find those things to be hopeful for, to
Mm-hmm.
find ways to trust. And you're connecting with spirit at the same time, because you're connecting to your own soul.
Mm-hmm.
So those moments are just, I think, the most hopeful.
Yeah, I agree. What what do you think was the reason that, or what inspired your working with hope in the past couple weeks? Where did that come from?
I think it came from um, the barrage of news, and also from clients
Mhm,
and some students. And I've just been kind of focused on hope, and I felt guided to really delve into it and look at my own
mhm,
level where I was at.
mhm,
And it was interesting when I asked the question, what are you hopeful for? And I got a whole list of responses.
mhm.
And my answer to them was, I'm excited because all the things that you're hopeful for is already taking place. So
That's
it's
beautiful.
exciting. It's sometimes we just need somebody to say, it's, hey, that's already happening. You already have that. That's already a tool for you.
And it's
So,
being the observer to see that, because sometimes, like I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about projects that we were doing and whatnot, and it wasn't getting off the ground or whatever. And we were in similar places. And so after I hung up, I went on my merry way. And probably 15 minutes later, I thought, you just don't always see that what you're thinking is not the same as what reality is. So the point to being that we really were going forward, it just felt like we
yeah.
weren't, because we get an idea of what an end result should look like. And that's not always the thing. So what I was thinking about when you were talking about what's happening in the world, it's that same kind of thing. We have this idea of what we want the world to be like, and it isn't that way, but there is always a point to what we're going through. We go through the
Right.
process to get to the other side. So that should bring people hope, is to know that we're not really off track, don't you think?
No, I think so. I don't think that we're off track at all. I think, if anything, it's making us more aware of
Mhm.
changes that we need to be making
Exactly.
as a community and a society. And it's going to take our voices to make those changes.
Exactly.
So, but the good news and the hope is that people are being heard and
Mhm.
that people are speaking out more and more
Mhm.
about things that need to change.
Right.
And to me, that's very hopeful.
It is that we're seeing it, and that people are actually becoming a part of the process for the change, instead of waiting for somebody else to do it or hoping that it will get better. Actually, again, like you said, it's an action, it's a muscle that you have to develop. And so I feel
Right.
like there's so many things that are being shined on right now. The light is shining on it. So we can change, so we can make changes for our next generations to come.
I think it wasn't it Gandhi that said, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Exactly.
So, and you don't know how powerful that is, because the little things that each one of us do
Hmm.
definitely ripples out into the universe. And so the changes that you make personally,
Hmm.
and even the action steps that you take as a person
Yep. Mhm.
in your daily life matter.
I totally agree with you. And I see that through what I've been doing and the people that I've been working on with, because sometimes we need to have that guidance of how to go forward, right? But when you make these little steps, so every time I see that I've made an adjustment, then it ripples out to everybody around in my circle. So it's
Right.
a whole ripple effect that actually is playing out, and we can't deny that that's not the truth. And it goes both ways. If I'm being angry or lashing out and I'm hurting somebody, then I'm sending that ripple effect out.
Right.
It's something we have
I
to be really aware of.
I do. I believe that too. And recently, I know that I don't know quite how to say this, but recently I had an experience
Hmm.
with family member that was kind of traumatic.
Hmm.
And I'm where we live is compassion and understanding and love.
Mm-hmm.
But in this particular environment, it was not that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, it was a little disillusioning.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do I say something or do I not say something?
Mm-hmm.
And so, me being who I am, I of course said something,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't lash out with it. I just said, you know, if this was your mother, you would be really concerned here. So, if you can think of it that way
Mm-hmm.
and be compassionate with this person and step in and treat this person like your mother, I
Mm-hmm.
think we would all be in a much better place. So it was with a medical facility actually, and sometimes they get, I know they're overworked and underpaid,
Right.
but it doesn't take the place of compassion and care
Mm-hmm.
and level of care.
Right. But what
Yeah.
you did was perfect. It is something that I have a very strong personality. And so I can tend to be a scorpion, and sting. And I
Me
work
too.
hard at not being that way.
Yeah.
But it's not that I'm changing who I am,
No.
because that part of me is a good thing and a bad thing. There's not right or wrong on that one. But how we deliver it, which is what you just
Right.
described, is the key. Doesn't mean that, okay, you have to sit around and be happy and smell flowers and life isn't going to happen and you're not going to be who you are actually meant to be here.
Right.
That's where I think people get off track thinking, oh, I have to be this way. You just have to learn how to be you in a way that's not going to hurt somebody or cause strife in somebody's life.
Or to be heard in a way so that you can be heard, because if
Exactly.
you lash out,
Uh-huh.
and because I'm a Scorpio too, and I get it, things are supposed to be a certain way, and when they're not,
Yeah. Yeah.
but so for in that instance, I felt that I delivered the message the best that I could.
Right.
And I know, unfortunately, that my family member is not the only person that experienced it, and
Mm.
so I felt like it was important to say something.
Right.
And then the response that I got back was, "We'll do better."
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's
Right.
what happens when you do it from a place of truth and power, but not anger and frustration.
Right.
You get people that will, like you said, hear you and respond. Whether they change or not, it's still up to them, but they will hear what you're saying. And then you're putting water on the fire instead of putting gasoline on the fire.
Right.
That's been a hard lesson for me.
Some days are better than others.
I
I
try.
wish we could be perfect people all the time, but we just do the best that we can.
Right.
But I think that not saying something in those instances
Right.
is is not good. I
Right.
think we really need to find ways to use our voices.
Hmm.
But that experience, I think, is what triggered the feeling of hope within me, because
Uh-huh.
that person or that facility could have come back to me in a different way, but
Mm-hmm.
they didn't. They came back with, "We'll do better,"
Mm-hmm.
which made me feel hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear what you're saying, and a great lesson. Really, thank you for sharing it for everybody, because we all do tend to react in ways that we're not always happy about. But even those are lessons that we learn. But to be able to learn is what we're here for, and you saw the fruits of what you learned clearly.
It was a really difficult
Uh,
experience, to be honest with you. It was really hard. It was really difficult, but just like everything else, hope and trust was there.
right. Because
Sometimes we have to just,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, sometimes we just have to dig a little deeper to find it.
We do. But it does bring trust, right? The more you do it, the more that you can practice and not beating yourself up about, oh, I did it again. It's about being aware and the observer that you did it again, and that next time you can do better. And each time you do get better at being able to speak your truth in what I would look at as more loving, and what needs to be said, not in a way that's you filled with shame or guilt or anger or negativity in any way.
Right.
How you learn. You're learning as you go along.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And being open to do it. And then you probably have changed in that environment for the patients that are there. You've changed it for all of them.
I hope so. I think that it was an important issue that needed to be addressed. And I do hope that, and I'm going to take their word for it, that they're going to do better. Yeah.
Well, even it's words that they put out into the universe. So that alone changes the vibration to some extent. So still
Yes,
part of processing forward as we go.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
I, go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say that I find hope in the smallest of actions and
Right.
words,
Yeah.
and how much they have, um, and the words that I say to myself too.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's very important. I have horrible words I say to myself, and that's our worst enemy is our own mind. And so if we can find the hope and the trust within our heart and our own being, then we can be better also at that, being able to curb those chatter,
Yeah.
stories, images, whatever, goes on in your head.
Hmm. Right.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. And catching those things sooner rather than later, because, we talked about the spiral. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that when we get into that negative self talk, then
Mm-hmm.
that spirals into a whole bunch of different
It does.
things. Yeah.
It really can. It really will open up. If you can't, I think, grab a hold of it sooner, it opens up a lot of other things that could go wrong or right. I mean, you're learning from it though,
Right.
each time.
So, right. And so the things that are going right are usually the ones that are hopeful. And because, what we reap what we sow, we, create our own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
But if you believe in destiny, I think there's destiny, and I think there's a lot of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but so focusing on the good stuff and
Yes.
focusing on hope and focusing on trust,
Right.
whether you have it 100% doesn't matter, because all you need is just a little bit,
A little bit.
a
I
little
was
bit.
talking with somebody the other day about sometimes because what we think we create, what we think we put out there. Um, Sometimes though we don't realize that we have that little bit of a spark, that little bit of the more hopeful aspects of whatever we're going through, and the universe still hears that, because we were chatting about how there were times where in spite of ourselves something changed. It was that inner being, that inner part of you that knew what was best even though you weren't outwardly acting it. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense to me, because I know that there have been many prayers that have been answered on my behalf that never got uttered, from, that just bubbled up from my soul.
Right, right.
So I totally agree with that.
So don't feel disheartened, because sometimes your inner being, your higher self knows what your desires are. And it's not like, it's so funny how this is coming up again, but a friend of mine talked to me about a spirit board, and I was like, yeah, I've been kind of interested in a spirit board. I don't know. I really haven't spent that much time with it because I have so many other things to play with. And so the bottom line was, I read this review from somebody about a spirit board, about how, God is in heaven and evil is on the planet, and that's where we're living. And I was like, I believed that. How could we believe that? That me as a mother would have a child and put a child into an orphanage and say, you raise the child in this, I'm not going to say it's evil, but you understand. It's like not
Right.
familiar, the darkness, the unfamiliar, the scary, whatever. And I'm going to stand back and I'm just going to watch you and see how life goes. I'm like, who made up this stuff? That's not what the world is like. That's not reality. And the more that we could see that we have all of the tools, all, you know, our higher self has the best direction in mind for us. We have all the support all the time. And I don't know how I got off on this tangent, but it really has been a part of something that I've been seeing more and more, how the world can seem so hopeless because we have this belief system that God is above and all the angels, the good angels can't come to this realm, that only the dark angels, and we're living in this darkness is somehow expected to become something better.
That's a very sad place to be.
Isn't it?
It is. And, I come from a background of
Mm-hmm.
a, um, not a benevolent being,
Uh-huh.
divine being,
Uh-huh.
but a punishing one. And
Right.
so I really had to learn how not to do that,
Right.
because and then I just got to a place where I knew in my heart, mind, and soul that my understanding of God was one of love and benevolence and
Right.
had the best wishes for me. So regardless of who you who the divine is for you,
Right.
I think that feeling of being punishing is an old one.
It's
I
very
don't think we need to go there anymore.
no, we don't. And
No.
you know, we all go through a process of learning. We're all at different
Yeah.
places. I was definitely very steeped in that kind of belief system.
Yeah.
And, you know, like we talked about and have talked about before, I just knew that I had to come out of that because that wasn't what was true within me. But
Yeah.
it does give you hope when you could think about, even in spite of ourselves, we have a team that's around us all the time that's going to help us stay on the track that we need to be on. And there's a lot of hope in that. That because like you, I've had so many times where I didn't know I was thinking that. I didn't know that was the desire or in my heart, but that whole team around me knew that it was and created that in spite of, I want to say in spite of myself, even though that's not the truth. It was in co-creation with self.
Yes.
There's a lot of hope in that.
There is a lot of hope in that. And I don't think that any of us do anything alone. I
Hmm.
think that we always have a whole team of spirit guides and angels and deceased loved ones that are always working on our behalf
Yeah.
to communicate with us, to support us, to keep us on our path.
Hmm.
More than anything, just to love and support us.
More,
Uh,
yes, totally. I totally agree with you.
and but we talked a lot about there being a process, and I think that the process of moving from this
Hmm.
punishing divineness
Hmm.
to a loving benevolent one is a
Hmm.
process.
It
But
is.
that punishing divineness is fear based, and so
Exactly.
uh,
Patient.
there's a whole nother subject there.
Yes.
But moving out of that fear
Hmm.
uh, based thinking was huge for me,
Yeah.
and it was quite a journey to
Yeah.
move through that.
Yes. I hear you. But it's worth
So,
it at the end. Yeah,
oh,
I people
absolutely.
challenge. I don't say, you know, we're not here to say this is right, this is wrong.
Yeah.
We all go through our own process, and you have to. The one thing that I like to tell people is you have your belief system, and nobody should tell you that you have to change your belief system,
Right.
but you have to challenge your belief system. You
Yes.
can't just accept that this is what I was taught, or this is what I know now and I believe it's mine, because a lot of the things that I believed was mine, I realized wasn't mine. I was taught that from birth.
Yeah.
And so that's a part of my process too, is challenging why do I think this? Where did this come from? Is this serving me? Can I really prove that this is the thing that I believe? I believe.
Right.
Challenge everything.
Exactly. And I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but um, I saw spirit when subjectively, like a person, when I was like 11 or 12. I
Hmm.
started having these experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day I asked my mother, like, and I saw energy coming off a tree, and I said, "What's that stuff coming off the tree?" And
Mm-hmm.
she was like, "What are you seeing?" All worried. And the
Yeah.
next thing I know, she was taking me to see this old time medium guy who scared the crap out of me. I was like 15. And so
Oh,
from like 11 to 15, she would take me to see him to get me to quit doing that. So it was a process for me. And then I learned to be scared of it and
yeah.
be fearful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I then learned to block everything because that's what I was
Yeah.
taught to do.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of my life, I've spent undoing that,
Yes.
undoing the fear,
Yeah.
undoing that old belief system.
Mm.
But I know that my mother was doing it in her mind to help me,
To
right?
save you. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Sure, it's for that reason. But
absolutely.
I believe that's still a part of our process of growing anyway.
Yeah,
Hmm.
is to move through the fear part of it
Right. And
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 to
the challenging and unlearning part of it. Hmm.
yes, I do too. I do too.
Because it's something that you never go back and question again. I mean, when you can actually literally challenge your belief system, I believe that you are learning that so deeply in your DNA that you have learned that in this lifetime and will never have to go back to that again.
I am so happy to hear that.
I feel like it's
That
my DNA and it's not going anywhere anymore.
Yeah, right. I agree. And it was really interesting. When my mother's gone, but
Uh-huh.
when my mother was passing, we had this conversation. And it ended up where before she was bedridden, we went to the local metaphysical store and
Uh-huh.
we both got card decks and we spent time sitting on her bed. She read me cards and I read some for her. And we had this deep
Uh-huh.
conversation about how she was intuitive and it
Uh-huh.
scared her. And,
Oh,
she didn't know what to do with it. And so that's why she did what she did.
how
But
beautiful.
then I was like, it was just a really healing moment.
Oh,
But of
yeah.
course, I had been through a lot to get there, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I never knew because I was seeing auras. I think I was seeing spirits too, but I was too afraid of it myself. And I'm sure it a lot of back family stuff that led me even at that age for the fear of it. But I was seeing people's auras and didn't even want to ask anybody. I thought I was just having bad eyesight. Like, why am I seeing that? And it took me years to even realize that it was an aura. And so I shut it down. And when I would come around somebody that was really in the light, I couldn't shut it down. So then I would, like, how you blink and you're trying to change the environment.
Right.
It was like, I never knew that's what it was. I was thinking I was crazy.
Yeah. I was thinking I was crazy too. So that's probably why I'm going into counseling. I don't know. No, there's a lot of different reasons for that. But yeah, it's when you don't have those open conversations, I
Right.
think especially important with children, that
Exactly.
they understand that their intuitive experiences, their spiritual experiences are
Mhm.
very normal. And
It would
though,
help it would help kids to not be afraid. I don't know how many people in our work, I don't, forget me. There's so many people that I've talked to that had seen spirits when they were little and they were really afraid. And
yeah,
wouldn't it be beautiful if we could teach even in the public schools about these kinds of things to at least make kids that are feeling this, hearing this, seeing this, to know that they aren't crazy,
that would be wonderful.
wouldn't it?
It would. It would be really wonderful.
And it would change our world.
Yeah, it very would. Hmm.
Make it a much better place to live.
I have clients that come to me and ask me those questions. I'm sure that you do too. What do I say to my child? You know, and
You tell them.
I tell them, you know your kid better than I do, but this is however you want to say to take the fear away is great. I talk to them about Archangel Michael, maybe talking to them that it's all about love and light, and these people are here to help them, or whatever they're seeing, and make it very as normal as possible.
Exactly.
So how are you asking questions?
Hmm.
How do you feel when you're with this person?
Hmm. Hmm.
When you see this, how is it that you're feeling? And
Hmm.
just having a conversation with them. And the most important thing I feel like is to negate the fear, because then fear just creates more fear stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Play with it, make it normal. Don't be afraid of it yourself, even if you're not seeing or hearing or feeling to that extent. If you make it playful and open and safe, then you're going to help them through the process of learning what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And well, and then the other question I get asked a lot is, what do I do to help my child? And I say, that's take care of your own energy before you come in the door.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So kids are like little sponges. They're open to everything. And I think that they're sensitive, more sensitive to parents' energy more than anyone's,
I
because
agree.
they're built that way.
Yep. Well, we all are. They're just more tuned into it versus
Yeah.
because we shut down, like we learned to do very
Right.
fast, especially for me and my family dynamics. I learned to shut down really fast. I learned to conform to the family unit then because for peace and safety, you know,
Right.
and
Yes.
I wasn't free to really explore or be who I was. But they're so open, like you said, they're just so open and at a very young age.
Yeah. I When I was like riding bikes with my friends and
Hmm.
my sister, and I saw a child out in the desert, and this child looked to me like about 3 to 5 years old.
Hmm.
And I said, "Hey, stop. We have to go get that kid and take him home. He's lost." And everybody looked at me like, "Who are you talking to? Who are you talking about?" And I'm like, nobody else is seeing that. I had no idea what
Yeah,
was going on like you.
yeah.
And then other things kept happening in the home over that period. So uh, I can see that my mother was like, I don't know what to do, you know.
Oh, now did your
Yeah, I
sister
know.
see souls? I know, poor thing. Does your sister see?
My sister does not see. She
Okay,
is a very strong feeler.
okay.
But we know when she was a child, she saw.
Oh, she did. So
She did. Yeah.
wow. So she learned to cut it shut. Is she older or younger than you?
She's a year older.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you both were kind of going through it about the same time for your mom. So she didn't have one under her belt strongly before she took on two.
Well, my sister was very quiet and she never said a word.
Oh,
So I'm the one that was like, I'm the Scorpio child. I'm the loud one that says everything. So, and this is also how she got away with a lot of stuff when we were younger.
I think my brothers were this on the same boat. I was going to take care of it all. They didn't have to worry about it. They just stand back and either hide or go for the ride. One of the two.
That's it. That's it.
Wow. So she was learning through you how to shut down as well, though, because of
And
the
not,
way your mom was
yeah,
experiencing. Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
yeah. I think it's interesting that it seems to be a common kind of thing, like you said before, with psychics and mediums that have grown up that way, that we then have to go through the process of unlearning and learning,
Right.
and unblocking.
Hmm.
Yeah.
For me, I kind of feel like I would have liked to have not gone through that, but I'm happy that I did because I feel like I said, I feel like it's deeper inside of me. The knowing and the experience is more real because I don't know. I guess it's kind of like when you do something and you take it for granted. You don't really know where the roots came from or how you got there. You just are. This is like something where I feel like I've been able to dig deeper and understand deeper. So it's so deeply ingrained in me. And the duality of the two lives are so deeply ingrained in me.
And I believe too that that makes us more compassionate to other people who've been through the same thing, that we can
Right.
understand where they're coming from when they've had those experiences.
Mhm.
And so it just helps us not to be judgmental, I think.
Totally helps for that one because you understand the process for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I also feel like it really helps me to explain it to other people too, because I feel like I can come from a place of knowing both sides and helping people when they're struggling with something.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things back in those days to be afraid of. And
Yeah.
I mean, there was several things to be afraid of, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
that you were taught. And
Yeah.
so it's overcoming those.
Right.
And when I was going through my process, I would say, okay, show me. If this is not true, then show me.
Right. Right.
I was like, hands on hips. I want to know the truth, you know?
Yeah, I didn't do that because I knew I would have been knocked down if I did that. But I would have been. It would not have gone well. I learned real fast that, yeah, that wasn't going to work. In fact, I told my mom when I was 16, I think, I said, because we were Catholics, I
Uh-huh.
said, I'm really not feeling this Catholic thing. I think I want to try another religion. Didn't go. But I was the one that would voice it. We all thought it, but I was the one that would.
Right.
She's like, nope, you're not doing anything else until you're 18 and out of the house. Whichever one comes first. I
Yeah.
mean, if I was 18 and still in the house, I still had to follow her rules. So yeah.
Oh, I was talking about, I was having that conversation with spirit. I would have never had that conversation with my mother when I was growing up.
Yeah, I didn't stop that. I was like, nope, this is my reality. This is my beliefs, and you're
Yeah.
not going to make me do it your way anymore. I want to
Yeah.
do it my way.
Yeah.
And I didn't go into, spirituality and understanding. I still had to go deeper into old religion, which I'm happy that I did, because now if somebody comes to me with a Bible thing, I'm ready, man. Got it.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's
Been there, done
good
that.
good building block for me. And um, I mean, sure, we do the best that we can to know, because we know, but we're still human, and
Right.
so we still can have those doubts. So I think that part of that process has really helped me to see that I don't need to have those doubts, because I now have been in both sides and I understand what is true for me. I'm not going to say that everybody's going to see how I see it, but I
Right.
know what's true for me and what I truly believe
Yeah.
through that process.
Absolutely. And I think that that's the most important thing, is understanding what it is that you believe,
Right.
you know, and your spiritual connection, what that means for you. And just because I believe a certain way doesn't make everybody else wrong. It just
Exactly.
makes it what they believe.
And that's important to say, because
Yeah.
it's not wrong what you believe. You're where you're supposed to be for your lesson, for your life evolving.
Right.
So we should all, and that's the one thing about religion that we all talk about, so many wars over religion and deaths over religion and judgments over religion. It's all fear-based, instead of just letting people, go through the process they're going through in their timing,
Yeah.
which is back to
Eh,
trust and hope.
I think that your relationship with the divine
Hmm.
is the most important relationship ever,
Yep.
and also the most personal.
Hmm.
And so, and it's, for me, that spiritual connection is my reason for existing.
Exactly.
And I just feel like if it's coming from a fear base, I
Hmm.
don't, my understanding of the divine would not be that way. But
Yes,
that, yeah,
I agree with you. And it's all been your life experiences. And I think that's something that we need to remember, that, it's our life experiences that bring us challenging, and not just being on autopilot, because that's what I lived the first half of my life on, was autopilot. Just whatever I believed was what I believed, and I didn't question it. And it's not that questioning it is, like you said, a bad thing or a controversial thing. It's just questioning, asking, where did it come from? And is this really me? And what if I opened my mind? Because that's the one of the things I wouldn't do because of my background, was even open my mind to other things, because we're so brainwashed about certain.
You'll be smitten, you'll be
Yeah,
smited by God if you
hell you're
do.
going, and it's, but to open your mind, because we're supposed to be intelligent beings. And so if you can at least take it in, if you truly believe it, no matter what you open your mind to, you're not going to take it unless it's something that will resonate with you. Or there may be a spark inside of you when you hear something to say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't think of it that way. Let's do some more thinking about that. Or asking your guides, ask your higher beings to help you, like you did. What is the truth?
Yeah.
So challenge things, challenge.
Prayer is powerful,
That's what,
however you choose to do it.
exactly, which is so
Mhm.
important. What did make you go into family, to get your master's degree in psychology?
I It was this work actually.
Okay.
Um, it was a combination of my own experiences in life, which is the things that we've been through. And then when I was working with people, there's just such a need for it.
Yeah.
And I think that I just felt like sometimes I get stopped when
Mm-hmm.
I would be working with a client that needed counseling. And
Mm-hmm.
I just felt out of my depth in some areas.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to be able to do that. I do feel like trauma is one of the things that will stop us
Mm-hmm.
from moving through fear,
Mm-hmm.
from being able to reach out for help when we need it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's one of the areas that I am going to be specializing in down the road, because I know that when you heal those things, the gifts are the gifts that come from that are
Mm-hmm.
invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's life.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
We listened to a talk from Andy Being over the weekend, and it was really amazing. And what I loved about it is that things are not as simple always as we think they are, and that there's so many different things that can go on with the mind, other than just saying, oh, you just need to be, following your path kind of thing. So I love that you put all that together, because I can see you really use all of your tools then to help somebody. And sometimes people really do need to have professional help when it comes to things of the mind. It's not just about spirituality.
Right, because they might be having a spiritual, it might be a life or a spiritual experience,
Hmm.
but underneath it, there's the reason is trauma based,
Right,
and or something like that.
right,
Uh, there's just so many things that can stop us, and I think that counseling is really good about
right.
helping to unearth those and move through it.
Hmm. Well, it also reaches more people, because not everybody is going to come and see a psychic or a medium for certain problems, right? They're going to, but if you cover all the bases, then you're going to be able to help a lot more people. Because
That's my goal and my wish.
yeah,
Yeah, is to be able to do that. Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful. Love it.
Thank you.
What is the one thing that you hope to impress upon the world with change?
It is about it's about each other.
Hmm.
It's about our connection to each other
Hmm.
and about being compassionate. It, I think that it's not about always achieving, but about being of service.
Hmm.
And so if I can think of that, I think that would be the one thing.
That's beautiful. That really is being of service, because that's what we're here to be, as service. I love that. That's beautiful. Mm. Well, thank you for sharing with us in this time and your wisdom. It's always awesome to have you here. You're so easy to talk to, and we covered a lot of subjects today.
We did.
You never know what road you're going to go down with me, do you?
Thank you for having me as always. I enjoy our talks and it's always amazing. And you're very insightful and soulful, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, I will have in the chat the information for Carolyn so you can connect with her. And I appreciate everybody watching this on the replay. Well, on the replay. And have an amazing day, and I will see you on the next show. Bye.